Hey there, welcome. I'm Cindy Daycheck with Queen Bee Creations. Thanks for checking us out today. I have so much stuff here in my shop, and I go and I thrift all kinds of different finds, and sometimes it builds up. So I grabbed one of the projects that has been waiting forever for me to get to, and we're going to deal with that today. And it's this pair of old wooden candlesticks. Now, they're nice and tall. They are covered with wax, so I've got a pair of them. So the first thing before we do anything is we gotta get rid of all the wax. And I'm not turning them into something other than candlesticks, but I'm going to be doing more than just leaving them as is. I don't think that there's as much call for tapered candlesticks that are this big. So I do want to switch them into something that's going to hold decor, that's going to hold pillars, that's going to be a little bit more. So we'll get to that. But before we can do anything, we got to get rid of the wax. So one of the first things that I do is just get rid of the bulk of it. So as much as I can just kind of nicely chip off, then I will. And whether I'm using a scraping tool like this or, for smaller areas and things, a screwdriver, I'm going to do that. I'm not worried about harming the finish because the finish is going away. It's not nice, and it's all scratched up and everything anyway. So I don't mind if I scratch it, but I do want my paint to stick. So I'm gonna clean off as much as I can this way, and then I am going to take my heat gun to it. So I'm just going to kind of heat gun it, not burn it, but just lightly kind of soften any of the wax residue and wipe away until it feels nice and clean. So just so you know, that's the big reason that people get rid of these things is that they've got wax on them and they can't be bothered getting rid of it. So sometimes you can pick up some really gorgeous candlesticks that you just have to melt the wax off of it. Not a big deal, really. So I'm just gonna do that behind the scenes though, get rid of all of this grunge, and then we're gonna come back for the next step. And really what we're doing is we're saving these from a landfill. We're gonna make them beauty again, make them usable again, and they can grace somebody's home, whether for the holidays, after the holidays, whenever. I'm okay whenever. Use the heat gun on this, you're gonna see the wax just instantly turn liquid. It doesn't take a lot of heat and it happens pretty fast. So you wanna keep your gun kind of either moving or be prepared to wipe it away quickly, just so you're not burning or causing more damage to the finish than you wanna have to deal with. But it really works quickly and it does a great job. So you'll see it turn liquid. As soon as it goes shiny, you can start wiping it away. And it's a great way to be able to clean up those surfaces and get all that excess wax away. Now the next piece, before we start painting these, is I wanna add to them. So, as we said, like these tops, they just take a taper candle and they're kind of really tall and awkward. They've got a really big base for just taking a taper. So I think that they would work better if we gave them more of a foundation here. So you've got a couple of options. You can attach almost any kind of a flat surface to this. And I often thrift, those old glass coasters. So any kind of coaster is going to work. I happen to have these little metal coasters, which I love because, especially if we're using them for candles, you know, those burny things, especially if you use them for something with heat. You know, the metal isn't going to cause any problems with that. So we're going to attach this on. I'm going to glue it because it becomes problematic, even though this is wood, to drill through the metal and down into this narrow banding. You could do wood fill and then drill down into the wood fill. That would be better, but I'm also not looking to, I mean, these aren't worth a lot of that time and effort, if you get my gist. So you could do that. If you're making it for yourself and you want it to be really solid, then absolutely drill a hole through this first, wood fill this, let it dry, put this in, drill right through down into it, and then you've got something really nice and solid and secure. I'm going to be adding more to it, and so I am not doing that, but I still want it to be pretty secure. So I am going to be using a combination of items. So one, this is some clear grip, super hard, durable Gorilla Glue. So I'm putting a couple of what I want to be fairly big dabs on two opposite sides. And then I'm going to be taking hot glue on the other sides. And then I'm going to try and center my plate in there. Now, this, as it cools, what I will do once it's cooled off is I'm going to go and add another bead around the base of it. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry and harden. I'm gonna do the other side, and then I'm gonna add another bead along the base, because once it's painted, we're not gonna see that. And I do want it to be secure. And I just like to give you guys an idea, you know, that you're kind of looking, going, look, I don't have an electric drill, or I don't have, I don't want to invest in metal drill bits. Certainly if this was a glass, you're not going to be doing drilling into the glass. So I just want to give you an idea of kind of how I do it so that, again, it stays nice and secure. And I find that using the two types of bonding agents just really helps make it that much more secure. So again, I'm gonna let those harden and cool before we do the next step. We still have more to attach onto these. You could just stop with this. You could add just something like this on the top and then be done, because already we have something for our pillar candle. I'm just doing another little extra something, but I'm gonna glue the base a little bit more once I know that this is gonna be firmed up. And then I'll be back. These are firmed up enough that I can add the next piece on, but I'm gonna want them to dry overnight to ensure that they're really on there nice and solid before I start painting and moving them around and banging them with my brush. The hot glue, of course, is pretty much dry, but this glue is gonna take longer to really be able to set up, and it's this that I put around the rim to make sure that it was on nice and tight. And it is mostly this that I'm gonna put around the rim of these metal frames. So these are I forget what they're called, skeleton light shades. Now, this would just be on like a shade on a lantern coming down. I thrifted those and they fit in perfectly. And this is just gonna be a nice little protectant, like a barrier for, you know, if you're doing a pillar candle, then it's just going to keep it from toppling over as easily, since we don't have a spike coming up in through here. It also means, you know, you could nestle a bowl in here, or you could put a little planter in there, right? A little terracotta pot's gonna fit in there. So it's gonna give us a lot more flexibility. And I like that. I like having multiple uses for something. These I thrifted as well. So everything that I'm thrifting, I've only ever seen them the one time. But you can get the small lampshades constantly in thrift stores, and you just strip them yourself. They might not be quite as decorative, but they're still gonna work exactly the same. And some are gonna be taller, some are gonna be different shapes. I love to grab a bunch of those for different needs all the time. So don't, don't ever count them out here. So I'm just putting a rim of this around most of the circumference. I'm leaving 3 little open spots, and that will be where I'll just put a little bit of a dab of my hot glue, just so that, again, it helps hold it in place kind of immediately. And there's our candlestick, unpainted. We still get to do that part coming up, but already, look at, envision is painted. So cool, right? So much nicer already. Now, because this is metal, you could have left this and glued it in after you've painted. I'm gonna finish everything all together, but options. I like to give you options. So I'm just gonna get this one glued. I'm gonna leave them to dry out, and then we will come back to finish them off once they've had a chance to do that. This is all attached, and sorry about the noise. It's on very sturdy, right? So no worries about it. I mean, most people aren't gonna pick it up that way anyway, but if you did, it's hanging in. Now, to paint this, we know this isn't in great shape. So I'm not looking to do a finish that's gonna be really smooth, because then I'm gonna be disappointed. So instead, I'm gonna deliberately do a finish that's not smooth. That's all kind of rough and textured, and just go with it. So what I am starting with is Gray Skies, which is the DIY all-in-one paint. Just looking to see if I had a stir something. Well, I do now. Okay. Because I have lots of extra little IOD things. So this is a pretty liquidy, smooth paint, because typically, like the all-in-ones, you want them to go on nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do, because I don't want this to be smooth, I am going to pour a bunch of this out, just so it looks like it's enough to kind of get on both of them. And I am going to mix up some baking soda paint. So it's going to add, the baking soda is going to add texture to this paint. And so when you guys ask me for, I'm just mixing this up in front of you. I'm just faking it. There's no definitive amounts, because it really depends upon the kind of paint that you use. This all-in-one is gonna go pretty chunky pretty quick, but if I started with the regular DIY, which is a pretty thick paint, it's not gonna take as much baking soda to be able to add some texture. Now you, of course, I have a video where I trialed doing different textures. You could add baby powder to this, which makes it smell really lovely. That was nice. Maybe put a link in there to see, so that you can go back and you can look at some of the different options of how to add texture. Okay, I kind of spritzed some of this out onto my table. And all I'm doing is I'm kind of adding this you know, slowly until I get the texture that I'm looking for. Now look at, now we're cooking. That's what I want. I want this where you can see it's still gonna hold some peaks. Now, here's the other thing. I want to have a bit of a blended finish. So I have a little bit of, I just want to do it as I go. So I have a little bit of DIY weathered wood, which is like a dark gray. So I'm just pouring that out onto my plate. And I actually have some Annie Sloan duck egg blue, which I just happen to have because I worked on a custom piece for a client. That's the color they wanted. So I don't mind using Annie's paint. So I bought some to be able to do their cabinet. Sometimes I get asked to do paint lines that I don't like, and so I refuse. But Annie's paint is okay. So there you go. So I have a couple of chip brushes, and what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be starting this first. So I am just, you can see, I am just pouncing this on. I don't have it so thick that I'm getting really high spiky peaks. I am just doing it enough that I'm getting kind of little pebbly texture. I think that's probably the right way to describe it. So what I want to do here is get my gray on first as kind of my base coat. And then, turn the lid over, I'm going to take a different brush and I'm just going to kind of start to pebble that in. So that I get a little bit of shading happening. And let me try and show you one side versus the other. So I just have a little bit of shading and shadowing happening right while the paint is still wet. And I'm dipping into both colors. So I have some of the duck egg blue happening. I've got some of the weathered wood happening. And in essence, I'm putting it right down into that existing gray paint. So the gray paint is the dominant color, but I'm getting some of that worn, mottled look right off the bat. And so all that remains is for me to do that on the entire piece and then do it again on the other candlestick and letting it dry. And then I can come back to you. But this is fun painting because we're just dabbing. We're just going and dabbing. Now, I will be doing this bottom edge too, not the very bottom, but just along the outside. And I'll get that all done as well. We've had overnight to dry. And what we're gonna do is make this look like this. Now this is the finish. Let me just kind of hold it, see if you guys can see that we've got. It's got a light rough texture because we still left, we didn't put so much baking soda into our paint mixture and that it sat up in high peaks because I didn't want to get sanding. So I left it so it still kind of had texture, and then as it sat, it just kind of mellowed out. So we got texture that I can feel. I only needed to do one coat, but what we want to do is brighten it up a little bit. Let me see if I can show you guys the difference. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take some white wax, and I'm at the bottom dregs and it's not going to take much. I have a chip brush and I have a chip brush for every color of wax, and I just use it over and over and over again just for that color. So this is my white wax one. And I don't want a lot of wax on it because in essence what we're gonna do is we're going to dry brush the wax. So that way it's not paint. I'm not gonna have to seal it again. I'm actually not sealing this. One, because I predominantly was using the paint with a built-in sealer. The other paints that I kind of put on mixed and mingled with that. So it's actually pretty finished already. And then now I'm gonna be adding this little bit of white wax, which is also going to act as a bit of a sealer. But you can see here where it starts to highlight the eyes. So we have this that looks a little bit blah, a little flat. And then we have this texture here. And that's all that it's going to need. But what doing that textured paint did was it kind of filled in all those little chippy places or little chunks, all the uneven finish. So if you have a piece that's really not worth doing a major sanding job on, which these would not have been, then using a textured paint is a great fix because it's going to hide a multitude of sins and it's going to save you from doing a major sanding job, especially on a piece that is not going to sell at a price that is going to net you a return on your time. If you're doing it for yourself, sand away, right? You don't care about the investment of your time. But if it's for your business or it's for your booth, then you need to factor that in. So these little pieces in my shop were not worth sanding all down when I was just gonna paint them anyway, and nobody's going to want to pay for my time to have sanded them all down to a really nice smooth finish. So instead, we're creating a textured look. We're creating an interesting finish, and we've added to them. So you can see on this one, this all just looks now like it's part of it. And using that textured paint helped kind of fill in. You can't see where anything was glued. It's all now kind of masked and it's as one. So I'm gonna carry on with this and I'll take some pictures for you. Let me know what you think of this, guys. Think of certainly two things I think out of this, if I'm giving you ideas. One is how to be able to take the base of something that looked really tired, worn, old, how to be able to clean it up and be able to shift it into something that is much more functional. The little tapered candle idea was not going to work. Now we've got a surface that we could take a pillared candle, we could put a potted plant in there. You know, we can zhuzh this and use this however we would like. I like the idea too of putting like a little bowl in there and having these, you know, around a table that like a buffet table, or if you've just got like a little coffee table and you put these as extra little stands and they've got little nuts and things because your little coffee table that you're having snacks on isn't big enough. It extends your space in kind of a fun and interesting way. So there's a lot of uses for these once you've added the pieces to it. The other element is just the finish, thinking in terms of what you can do to a piece that has tons of nicks and dings and bumps and grooves, and how do we just add a textured finish so that just becomes all part of it and it looks like it belongs. Hope you get some good ideas from this. As always, guys, I love to hear from you and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.